In the latter part of the 1800s, something happened in the United States that was unprecedented. The president, Andrew Johnson, was impeached. He only took office after the tragic assassination of Abraham Lincoln, our previous president, just after the end of the Civil War. And as such, decisions on the recreation of our nation as a whole had to be made. Johnson was a Southern sympathizer, as he was from Tennessee, and he immediately met opposition within the radical Congress that was in the North. These radical Republicans were very angry with the South and wanted to punish the South for their secession. This anger led the Congress to propose the Wade-Davis Bill of 1864, which was very harsh and had very harsh requirements that were almost impossible for the South to make. Lincoln had vetoed this bill in favor of his own bill, but Johnson decided that he would try to compromise the two together. His terms were that all of the Southerners were pardoned besides those in high-ranking government or military positions, or those that owned more than $20,000 of land. However, he was able to grant pardons to those he deemed necessary to have them. Secondly, all the states, or rather previous states, would be governed by a military governor until they were able to ratify a new constitution, which had to include the 13th Amendment of the United States. This would seem to do well in theory, but Johnson abused the power of his pardon and pardoned more than 13,000 people, most of which were plantation owners who were in power before the Civil War. And the Republicans were rightly angry because these people were the same people that had caused the Civil War in the first place. Once their states had redone their constitutions, they were re-elected to Congress, and they could do the same fights all over again. As such, Congress spent most of its time trying to repair the damage done by Johnson's plan. The Congress passed the Tenure Act in 1867, which prevented Johnson from abusing his power and getting rid of any government employees that were high up that he didn't like. Johnson disregarded this bill and chose to formally dismiss his Secretary of War, Edwin Seward, as he supported the Congress instead of Andrew Johnson. This was a fatal mistake on the part of Johnson, however, as it gave the new Congress all the power it needed to get rid of him. On February 24, 1868, the Congress, or rather the House of Representatives, formally decided to impeach Andrew Johnson and sent the trial to the Senate. For 11 weeks the Senate debated, and Johnson was only saved from removal in office by one vote. He spent the rest of his term trying to veto the acts of Congress, which were then overridden by that Congress. And in the end of 1868, Johnson was no longer president, as he had lost election to Ulysses S. Grant, the Republican candidate. The impeachment of Andrew Johnson was a truly momentous occasion in American history. Only 2 presidents have ever been impeached, so it is something that those of us in the present need to think about. The ability of elected representatives to peacefully remove a corrupt dictator or president is something that makes the United States truly unique and great in our scope.